So something to share a little bit about pain and processing pain on this lifelong healing journey of ours, collectively. I think little monkey might join. Is as I come out of the cocoon of being, whether consciously or not, pulled out of society in ways to do a bit more reclusive hermiting to support the healing, whether I identified that or I was pushed into it by external situations, is that we all have pain and we can either be in it or have it and let it resurface as it does. But while we are in the pain, sometimes it's a lot easier for people to be triggered by the words and the actions of others, because it's like walking on eggshells around people who are still harbouring pain and resentment and bitterness from past actions. Whether it's perspectives on the male gaze, the patriarchy that we are moving out of, as I am part of the restoration of the matriarchy, but this still doesn't mean that we deny strong masculine leadership. Masculine is the energy, and the part of us, feminine masculine, needs that container, needs direction, needs leadership, needs action and structure. And then with the embodiment of the feminine, which we all learn, no one is, well, in my knowledge, my journey, certainly not perfected it. But it's an intention. It's an intention to check myself, to check where I might be. As I've spoke about this before, I was a little bit of a tomboy growing up. When I'm around a lot of men and dancing in a masculine sort of space, which sometimes that happens with the type of music that I listen to, is I can pick up a little bit more masculine energy. And so that's why my intention in my life and the stuff that I have to work through is anchoring into the feminine, being in the creative flow state, but also supported by a masculine structure, so that we don't get lost in the water, in the flow. We can lean into the flow and surrender to life, and obviously we overcome problems and challenges, but the difference between being in pain and having it is that we've acknowledged, we've accepted, we find the self-love as the root, as the foundation for which we build our lives and our communities on. To expect another, I usually tend to try to always work on the four agreements of always do your best, delayed gratification. No, that's a road less travelled. Always do your best, don't take things personally, don't make assumptions, and there's so many things going on. I can't quite recall the last one, but they're brilliant to look at. So in terms of anything that comes from an external space we can't take personally. That's the difficulty, is that we need to learn to not be defensive. It's that anyone's actions towards us is not about us. If we create this reality, anything that we create externally is coming from an internal imbalanced place. And this is not a negative or a positive or a good or a bad thing, because we don't believe in that. Life exists in the grey. However, the continual healing work, consciously or not, is that there's always going to be external things that pull us in different directions. So when we find self-love, when we identify what's hurt us, when we move through the healing, and if we need to take ourselves out of social situations, of collective communal environments for that healing, that is what we need to do. We need to take accountability of our own projections, of our own impacts, how our words impact spaces, how our internal reality can be projected onto spaces which are only really here to support love and growth and healing. And so only we are able to identify whether we are have the emotional capacity to interact with people on a day-to-day basis. I know I feel very, very deeply, and the more I move on this shamanic path with which I don't like labels, but just to know, I feel very deeply. So I know what I desire to handle. I can handle a lot. What I choose to, especially when I'm in spaces and places that I'm choosing to be in, is I will have very strong boundaries around the respect and the behaviour around me, and what I will accept and what I will not. I accept everyone as and when they are, but I can choose to move in and around those people, those spaces, because of what makes me feel good in my heart. Now, of course, life's not always sweet. We've got to take the bitter with the sweet. Carole King. Got to take the rough with the smooth. But being able to identify whether we are healed out of the pain or whether we are in pain is very, very important when we are creating offerings. When I move through the healing journey post dark stuff that came from an external place, is I knew that I was not able to offer my usual offering services in what I've created. I mean, you know, I've got a few different things that I can do. Some are more rooted in this practical, physical reality, and some are more, which is always influenced by the spiritual, but in terms of sort of categorising, is that some of it was more spiritual and wellness based. But I am unable to give, and this is my responsibility as a healer, self-healer, we are all healers, is I cannot lead, hold space when I am not rooted in love and honouring the truth of others and knowing what I can and can't hold space for without being defensive, without getting triggered. Our triggers are our responsibility. We can't expect somebody to just listen to a whole verbal diarrhea of past things, which we have all been through a lot, especially over the past 4 years, from 2020 to 2024, 2025, whether we believe spiritual psychological warfare, which is on the up right now, as a lot of us root collectively, bring in the light and hone the light and amplify the light. We need to be mindful of how we are conserving and preserving spiritual health. How do we protect ourselves? How do we maintain the balance internally? Silence, solitude, community, dance, water. If we're too connected to fire, smoke, then we need to balance with the water. Too much in the masculine aggression, angry, feminine, water. There is so much going on in the elemental realms that can support us to be more cohesive and unified in the spaces that we move in, with the intention of, I'm here for the journey, no expectations, we accept everybody. But I do have, and I will have, and I believe all of us need to have boundaries for self-preservation. The times we're moving through are intense, especially when we're moving in different directions, different cultures, different languages. We have to find a commonality, and that, I believe, I don't like the word should, but it's the heart, is compassion. Kindness or love is also truth and can be hard. I've talked about this before. Kindness is not niceness. We do not need to be nice. We can have compassion for the things that people go through, but when there is an expectation of someone to hold space for outbursts and outpourings of discord and misinterpretation because the internal reality is so in pain, it's sad to see. And I do not wish anything but love and healing to the people right now, and I continue, as someone who has not perfected it, is just ever learning, eternal student of the divine, greater, infinite intelligence, is that we got to dip in when we dip and dip out as we are emotionally capable, as we are mentally and psychologically, spiritually prepared for the energies of others. And I trust that as this collective ascension ramps up, we need to preserve our minds. We need to be mindful. How do we rise to the day? What are our habits? Are they toxic or not? No judgment. I have been there in situations where I have not acted in the highest interest of my health and well-being. However, I'm not a purist, but we need to be mindful of addictive behaviour. How do we start the day? Are we nourishing ourselves? What are we putting into this vessel? This vessel from which we can all channel so much light needs to be looked after. And this is being kind and gentle on ourselves. When we are kind and gentle to ourselves, when we feel seen by ourselves, when we know what we've done in our life and achieved, we don't need validation from anybody else. We don't need, our worth does not come from an external place. It comes from an internal place. 929. All my words, whether they are sometimes direct, and they may hurt others. I don't wish to apologise for that. I just trust that my intention is love. Never wish to hurt people, but because I can see and feel a lot more pain than I was once able, as you do the healing work, as you channel what's coming through, which is available to all of us, No one is better or worse. We have different missions, different paths, different timelines. And I choose my highest timelines, and there are things that I accept and things that I don't. And working in communal community spaces is conscious community. Conscious communities allow for, of course, expression, self-expression, freedom, but also accountability and responsibility, especially as adults. If we assume the role of elders in this life right now, we are meant to be here coexisting, co-creating with the youth of all generations. And them's my thoughts, really. So when we claim our personal power, it shouldn't offend or affect anybody else to the point where they start spewing at us. We just coexist in our own lives, in our own vibrations, and we don't need the validation of other people. We just try to input and add value and impact lives positively because we're rooted in love. We only want the betterment of everybody, not just me. Like, I'm not just in this position right now to live for me and get better and do better for me. I mean, in one sense, yes, that's we're born alone, we die alone, the healing is for us. But it's also to leave a positive impact. 1111 on the clock. Wherever I go, it's the fairy dust thing, whether people believe in the elemental realms, and we can't save anybody. But accountability is really important right now. Mindfulness is really important right now because we are going to be bombarded with a whole load of other vibrations that we may have never dealt with before. And the toxins and the various things that we put in our body, no judgment, can also, I mean, some of the light that's coming through will potentially lead to psychosis as people awaken because there's too much information. There's never too much because it's clearly coming through for a reason. There is a lot of information coming through, and we need to move slow. We need to be gentle. We need to connect with the elements. We need to spend time by ourselves and sit with the pain. And that's really difficult, and a lot of us may or may not choose that, but I'm here to encourage us that we are all strong enough to move through those moments of solitude and deep, deep pain and come back stronger, but we have to take accountability.